Assalamu alaikum guys, this is a new venture, a new podcast. It's called The Last Days. Because all of you guys keep banging on about, it's the last days, the Mahdi's coming, the Dajjal, what are we gonna do? Let's just give up, mate, let's just wait. Day of Judgment. Well, Paul, the Day of Judgment.
I'm scared already. I mean, we're going to talk about that, aren't we? We're going to talk about the Day of Judgment, we're going to talk about the end of days, the return of Jesus, peace be upon him.
You know what? We're not going to be doing that.
No? Really?
No. We're not going to be...
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, we're not going to be falling into that trap. We realize that you guys keep banging on about it. So the question now is, we're in the times that we're in, the last days, what we're going to do about it. Let's help each other navigate through this. So I've brought the best minds together, to help navigate the last days, And Paul, firstly, what do you think about the name The Last Days?
I think it's fantastic, actually, because we are in the last days. And how do we live in the last days? And what kind of issues? How do we navigate the rise of the far right, Islamophobia in Europe? You know, how do we get guidance at this time? So I think it's a really suitable, really timely thing to do.
Fantastic. So, inshallah, the aim is that the guests stay consistent, so you guys get used to us, so we get used to each other, and we can present to you the issues pertaining the ummah in the most natural, chatty, relaxed way possible. So I'm gonna start with myself, going around the table. We'll give a short introduction about just our background, what we can bring to the conversation, what our strong points are, and then inshallah, that will keep you guys more zoned in. So myself, my name is Zishan. I have a channel called Smile to Jannah. I'm a YouTuber. I have a news website called s2jnews.com. I'm at Speaker's Corner. I debate religions. So politics, theology, sociology, that's really what I do. That's a little bit about my background. Paul, what about yourself?
That's where we met, I think, at Speaker's Corner.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I run a channel, Blogging Theology, which some of you may have heard of. But my main Sunday focus is Speaker's Corner, where we meet each other and we battle it out and we talk to Christians and atheists and other people. And that's the highlight of my weekend.
The kuffar,
yeah? Well, that's one way of putting it, yeah. And something I want to talk about in a minute is the rise of Christian nationalism. And we're seeing that at Speaker's Corner and what that means for Muslims and the wider community.
Wow, I can't wait. Khalid, yara.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Khalid Azzam. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist now for the last 5 years, but I'm also a performance and development coach where I've been working with frontline police officers for the last 7 years. I have an interest in esotericism. My degree is in theology and religious studies, and my postgraduate is in psychotherapy. I have an interest in the dark arts and how that can influence the way that we are moving and the directions that we're moving in. So I hope to bring some of that to the table.
Big up Severus Snape.
Indeed.
Sheikh Abdul Majid.
Yeah, Jazakumullah. I appreciate the invite, Paul, Zishan, and mashallah, Khalid to my right. Alhamdulillah, I'm been involved in Islamic studies or the Islamic sort of scene for some years. Abdul Majid is my name. It's not my given name, by the way, but it's what I'm more referred to in the community. But we'll come back to that another time. My sort of background is generally Islamic studies. I trained as an imam, but I then felt the need to kind of train as a counselor, therapist. Long story cut short, alhamdulillah, I went into that venture, graduated back in 2019, and then I've been working in the field ever since as a therapist. So I have like what they call like a portfolio career, do a bit of this, do a bit of that. And alhamdulillah, I'm engaged in like different things. My main sort of interest is more family-based therapy and things along the lines of parenting and challenges which our community face. Our community have very sort of nuanced needs. It's not the kind of, I wouldn't say the Western model or the Eurocentric model doesn't always fit Muslim clients. We have our sort of like nuances, we have our sort of preferences, things work, things won't work. So alhamdulillah, I have an interest in that. Alhamdulillah, serving in that capacity and just jamming and doing my thing, man, you know what I'm saying? So I hope to bring something like that here. Bit of a nuance with the Islamic side, with the counselling side, and alhamdulillah, me and Khalid will also be able to riff or jam, however you want to say it.
I like jam.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Especially on toast.
Oh, mate, especially on scones or scones.
Scones.
Scones, all right.
You need to get it right. You're half English, so you got no excuse.
Nah, listen, they're called scones, mate. Don't even try that. That's what we call it. No, maybe that's a counter estate term. I don't know. Scones.
So as you guys can see, there's a mix. I mean, Sheikh is half English, half Pakistani. Paul is English. My background is Pakistani. Khalid is also Pakistani. So hopefully that will inform and give different perspectives to the conversations that we have. But without further ado, enough waffling, enough jibber jabber. The UK is, well, it's at a very interesting time with the rise of the right wing, the far right. It's not just the UK. You've got the US as well. You've got Brazil, Australia, a lot of politics. I mean, Modi in India, they're going towards populism, nationalism, kind of religious extremism, as we're seeing with Modi and the likes. But we're more concerned about what's going on here, because I don't think it will be an exaggeration to say that the Reform Party is pretty much ahead in pretty much all of the polls. And it's not unlikely to say that they will probably make the majority opposition in the next election. They might combine with Conservative. They might have people of their own. And we also know they have very Islamophobic, anti-Islamic, and even possibly racist rhetoric and sentiment as well. So what do we do? How do we navigate that? Am I just a conspiracy theorist? Have you guys heard this before? Well, we're going to be talking about these things from our different backgrounds. And Paul, let us know from your background how you think, if this is even a concern. Like, I just get up in the morning, eat my cereal, go to work, come back. Like, the people that I meet with, it's all fine. Like, what's this people sitting on YouTube? Are we spreading fear, Paul? Like, give me your analysis.
Well, gosh, that's a huge subject. But no, it's a real thing. It's an international Western phenomenon. We see it in the States, as you say, in Britain and throughout continental Europe. The rise of the far right, the rise of Islamophobia is a reality. And it's happening slowly, bit by bit, month after month, year after year. The temperature's going up. You know, it's not like overnight, but it's increasing incrementally. And it's very worrying. And one of the things I'm particularly worried about is the rise of Christian nationalism. Eastern Europe, we see it in Britain. Tommy Robinson now identifies as a Christian, of all things. Recently, apparently, he became a Christian. And, you know, the very term...
He's now in Israel, isn't it?
Yeah, a state that rejects Jesus as the Messiah. You know, it's the great irony. But Christian nationalism is a contradiction in terms. You look at the teaching of Jesus upon him peace. He never taught nationalism. The Apostle Paul, we may not agree with him, but he didn't teach nationalism. This is a complete, perversion or deviance in the Christian religion. Christianity is not nationalist, it's internationalist. It's universal, at least it aspires to be. So this is a perversion of the real faith. And I'm worried that the churches are now, certainly the mainline churches, so flabby and so kind of secularized, they're no longer robust enough to push back against this. So Christian nationalism is a problem because it's often very very anti-Muslim and Islamophobic. So we should be concerned. We should understand them. We should understand their theology so we can confront it and rebut it and refute it. And that's something you do very well at Speaker's Corner.
No, Jazakallah, and yourself included. So this is materializing in our communities through anti-Islamic hate, whether it's graffiti on walls, whether it's, firebombing the mosque. We've seen at least 12 incidents of anti-Islamic hate in the last month or so. However, when we now see how Keir Starmer reacts to that, as opposed to, say, the violence at a synagogue, it's very interesting and very intriguing. And from your experience, again, is it just some people even claim Islamophobia doesn't even exist? So even if we don't want to use that term, we say anti-Islamic violence. What's your analysis of that so far?
Personally, look, I mean, Shabana Mahmood, she gave a little speech in the Home Office, I beg your pardon, the House of Commons. And she was rightly so to point out what was happening kind of on the ground in relation to some anti-Semitic Jewish incidents. She particularly raised the Manchester incident and the stabbing. Now, she addressed on the 13th. She was talking about how this sort of crime has no space in society and so on. Then she spoke about she said, oh, there's a suspected arson attack which happened in Peacehaven. Now, the word, first of all, when I was reading the kind of comment, it wasn't suspected. On the 7th of October, literally, this is 6 days after you're delivering your thing, Sussex police already said this is an arson attack.
7th of October?
7th of October. So you're talking...
It's ironic, isn't it?
They already mentioned they refer to it as an arson attack. You're saying it's a suspected arson attack. So my first thing was, well, that's not a correct portrayal. Okay, cool. But then what happened is my other question is that she was referring to the Jewish incident, and we all agree that that's not right. There's no space for that. We don't agree with such a thing, and it should not exist within our society. Islam is completely against that, and anyone with a rational thinking mind would be against it. But then when they started talking about that as a terrorist incident, I would have thought they would have mentioned the Peacehaven incident as also a terrorist incident. My question is, why is it not getting treated as exactly the same? It's a question which we have to ask, because even if you look at the definition of terrorism, to intimidate a government, to intimidate the public, with an agenda of to increase a religious agenda or a hate agenda, if it's got these ingredients, that by definition fits terrorism, why are we not applying that here? You get me? So this is where I find it a little bit contradictory and a little bit unfair in the analysis. Now, I don't know if it's deliberate. Is it down to ignorance? I don't know. But we're watching this stuff. And then from my perspective, it seems like a bit of a double standard.
Yeah, I think if you look at the way politics are at the moment, if you're looking even at, you got the Labour Party, you got the Conservative Party, Reform. I think Reform is leading the polls. Conservatives are trying to catch up and they're doing a better job than Labour. Labour is now trying to win the Muslim vote and it's trying to win the right wing that they've lost. Frankly, where do you see this going in terms of the strategy of the political parties, and does that inform what they're doing and why they're doing?
It strikes me that this government, like all governments, is pandering to the prevailing mood, prevailing winds, which are similar throughout the West. We've seen with Trump in the States and other parties in Italy, the rise of Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, obviously in France, Marine Le Pen. So everywhere is seeing a rightward movement. And historically in the 1930s, when we had similar movements, it was very anti-Jewish. Now it's very pro-Zionist and anti-Muslim. So Muslims are the new target here, and it's very concerning. And I think as Muslims, we must unify. We must have unity in the Ummah, which is an international, all of us, a family basically of Muslims, and we must unify and push back against this through media, through our work at Speaker's Corner, through podcasts, whichever way we can. We need to push back and be robust in our response and not cave in like some so-called Muslim politicians who seem very quick to basically accept this right-wing agenda. I'm not mentioning any names, but they seem to succumb to it. We need to push back against it.
True. So Khalid, now that we've got the kind of politics, we've kind of given the backdrop of the politics, what's the psychology behind it? Because some people, when they're speaking amongst each other, they go, it's all a bit stupid, isn't it? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Where is it coming from? Isn't it obvious racism is wrong? Anti-Islamic sentiment is wrong. We don't hate everyone. Where is this coming from? And do you see it growing based on what we know of said things in the past?
I definitely see it growing. There's two things here. One is the lack of purpose. That's what underpins all of this. The nihilistic inclination isn't robust enough to carry a community through. And we've been living in this vacuum for such a long time now that if you can have lack of purpose and then leverage fear, what that does is it switches on your central nervous system to act in either fight, flight, or freeze. And if you can do that to an entire community of people, but then I can use things like symbols, things like slogans, I can appeal to your nostalgia, it will start to win hearts. Meaning, if I said to you, Zishan, Paul, Abdulmajid, these guys, and I'm not going to tell you who, they're coming for you. They're coming for your jobs. They're coming for your children. And I tell it in a story.
I'm getting scared already.
The thing is, it's this, but then if I go, but we can protect you. You need to go back to your old ways. You need to start focusing on what was real, what was right, And that's our Christian heritage. And it's a shame because it's almost a slur on Christianity, which is a wonderful faith. And the people who are rallying behind this don't even understand their faith. And that's what's scary. There's two things, Zishan, that I would like to tell your viewers, is two books that I implore them to read. One is Propaganda by Edward Bernays. All right, Edward Bernays, Propaganda, yeah. So Edward Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who was the father of psychotherapy. So you've got like the ustaz of psychotherapy, and this young man who's taken all of this information and he abused it. He went to the States and he used it to start campaigns to encourage women at the time to start smoking. And it became this real thing of empowerment. Look at us and look at this light that we've got in our hands. And propaganda is done in such a way where you engineer fear through repetition. And if you keep drip feeding this, as Paul was saying, it's incremental. If you keep drip feeding this slowly, and I increase the amount of slogans, I increase the amount of symbols that I give you. Human beings, and we'll touch on this afterwards, human beings are very much, we create symbols out of anything. Fritz Perls is a psychotherapist. He was the founder of Gestalt therapy.
Who's that?
Fritz Perls.
Fritz Perls.
And one of his texts, he wrote that if you were to look at a cloud for long enough, or any sporadic, combination of things, you will start to develop a face from it.
Pareidolia.
This is it. And so as human beings, naturally, we like to make shape, create images. And so symbols have always been used. And I'm sort of going off on a tangent here, but this is why idols were so popular. And Islam is the only thing that tells you to worship that which is formless. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. And so it's in this paradox where if I can give you something to rally behind, and I can ignite your fear to a point where you're now in a state of panic, I either need to fight you to protect my home, or I need to run away. But if I freeze, the boogeyman comes for you. It's the perfect recipe.
So what are they rallying behind? One thing that comes to mind is grooming. Yeah, we've got to protect our daughters from these groomers. The other thing is migration. What else is there?
You see, I'm going to disagree to some extent with what you're saying here, because although this is all real, when I look at the conservative Christian agenda in the United States, as a Muslim, when I look, I agree with a lot of the stuff they're saying. They're concerned with strong families. They're concerned with strong communities. They're against crime. That they're against trans and LGBT very often, and so on. And people like Tucker Carlson, controversial figure, but he's getting it. He's on many issues now. He mentioned the last days, the end of times. He's now talking about that on his podcast. He's getting guys in talking about spiritual warfare and demons in the occult. So they're talking about some real issues, in my view, but it's laced in, less so with Tucker Carlson these days, he's beginning to, but it's laced in also with nationalism, with Islamophobia, and a kind of anti-immigrant sentiment, which is also, so it's a toxic brew. It's not simply, these are bad guys, therefore we can just oppose them. I look at this stuff and I think, well, yeah and no, it's complicated. And a lot of what they're drawing on, you talk about the vacuum, the nihilism in our society, they're answering this need, saying, come back to Christianity. And that's why many young people, Christianity is growing again for the first time, like since the 19th century or something,
Which form?
Well, which form? This is the thing. So it's answering real needs to some extent. It's also mixed in with some really toxic, nasty stuff. And our response has to be quite nuanced, actually. I wish it could be more knee-jerk and black and white and make life a lot easier, but unfortunately it's not like that. We may end up attacking legitimate spiritual aspirations and articulations of issues, like over family values, for example, which we agree with as Muslims, where we could at least find common cause, but for their Islamophobia. And so for me, it's more complicated.
I think if I can add to that is that what it is that is people's subjective perceptions are being distorted. That in turn is creating prejudice. And obviously we know that stereotype is based off of prejudice. So it has this sort of like a domino effect. But I think what's happening is, I don't know, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're looking at that. There's a rise of this sort of Christian nationalism. I think by and large, I mean, the majority of people in UK don't even identify with Christianity anymore. True. That's so I don't know if, but I completely get your point that when it comes to Christian values, I completely agree. Like we agree with them in terms of family. We may have certain positions in relation to LGBT or trans sort of stances and so on. So I think there is a lot of common ground. And I suppose for us as a community, what we need to do is look towards solutions. And alhamdulillah, the Quran gives that. You know, I mean, for example, now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran, Allah mentions, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So basically, Allah is saying that, say to the people of the book that let's come into a common word. You know, that we don't worship none but one God. So these are commonalities. So I think that, yeah, the subjective perceptions of people are being distorted, but we need to show that in actual fact that there's more that unites us rather than differs with us or makes us different. And these are some of the commonalities that we agree on. Let's start with that. And I think that's the kind of remedy to this. The challenge is, right, is we see that because everyone is in this rat race, everyone is kind of, and obviously with the cost of living, everyone's worried about paying their own bills and doing their own thing. Who's got time for the da'wah and to actually make a difference? It's like, okay, others will do it. Well, someone's there at Speaker's Corner, someone's on their YouTube channel, someone's doing this, or Garles, and they'll do it. But that's not solving the problem.
Before we do get to solving the problem, the solutions, I think let's first really flesh out what the actual issues are. So far from Khalid, what you said, and I think melding what Paul said as well, there are legitimate issues. Yeah, they're legitimate issues.
I think there's an agenda. That's my...
So I'll give you an example. Yeah. So the legitimate issues would be birth rates. Yeah, the birth rates are going down. Now they're blaming Muslims by saying, oh, their birth rates are going up, therefore, you know, the great replacement theory. However, did we introduce LGBT? Did we introduce feminism, the boss babe culture, and, you know,
Did we stop having babies? I mean, when did Muslims stop anyone having babies?
Yeah, exactly.
I missed that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, like, are we that strong contraception that works 100% of the time? Are we stopping you guys from reproducing? Well, absolutely not. Reproduce away.
It's fine.
Go forth and multiply.
Well, so to speak, there's another way of putting it, but yeah, exactly. No, but there are people on the right who say that, look, you've got to have more babies. And I'm thinking, yeah, go ahead, if you want to have more babies, that's great, you know. But still, don't blame immigrants when we bring immigrants in to keep our society going because
no one wants to be in the care homes.
Yeah. So
no one wants to look after the elders. If you actually look disproportionately, you've got the Africans and the Asians that want to look after your parents. I saw a clip when they were saying, get the foreigners out, get the foreigners out. I saw this clip on TikTok where a doctor was saying, like, they're telling us, you know, to go back home, but I'm going to the hospital to look after their parents. The irony.
There's a mental hospital on my doorstep, literally on the same road I live. And you'll see majority of the care working staff are all African, Asian demographic. And these are quote unquote migrants or immigrants or people that are stealing our jobs. I'll give you an example. Right? I was talking to one, obviously being mixed race family, I was having a chat with a family member and he was quite, let's just say, put it nicely, a bit peeved off, okay, about migrants taking jobs or, you know, we ain't got jobs to be, to work and da-da-da. I'm like, look, bro, do this, yeah? You got a car in it. Why don't you do some delivery driving for a local company, just like pizza, curry, anything, just earn some extra cash. He kissed his teeth, going, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. And I was like, well, why not?
Yeah, Parvez would be happy to do that. Big up Parvez.
Yeah, or you know, so my point is that, you know, it's beneath me to do that. Well, listen, I remember this really actually hit me. And I was local and not too far from here. I'm not really a restaurant type of guy, but Mrs. with me thought, let's grab a little something to eat. So while I was there, one of the guys served our table. So I asked the question, where you from? Just strike up a conversation. He goes to me, I come from this country. He's a student. And he comes from a background where he had a really good job and he was willing to serve people curries and kebabs for the sake of his education. And I thought respect to that. And that doesn't topple it. Bro, East London once, I was there, I walk into this shop now again, we just grab a little something. And there was a guy, wallahi, he was sweeping the floor, right? This chicken shop. So I'll go to him, I'm like, brother, where you from? And ask a question. And he mentioned to me, identified where he's from. Wallahi, he said to me, in my country, I worked as a medical doctor. I've come here, I'm doing some study. I just do this part-time in the evening to earn some extra cash.
Madness.
I'm like, rah, look at that. Next man, he was a doctor. And yet he was willing to sweep floor in a chicken shop to earn that extra bread so he could pay for his education. And I asked him, like, what's the future for you? He said, if I can get a job here. And he actually would, our thing is to serve the people. If he had this thing, this horrible, this kind of attitude, now it's all about us and nothing about other people. He's like, I'm getting my thing, I'm doing one. Now, if I can serve the people, if I can get a good job, and alhamdulillah, all good, otherwise I'll happily go back. But the point is that he was willing to do that graft.
Yeah.
Where do you think this comes from then, Sheikh? Do you feel like it comes from entitlement? Because during COVID, you saw people that were laid off. There were pilots becoming Amazon delivery people and things like that. So do you feel it's entitlement?
It is. I think there is an element of that there. It's multi-layered. There's not just one answer to say this is it, but an entitlement mentality. I'm not doing that. It's beneath me. Why should I do it?
But is it almost like, well, if we're looking at the type of demographic that don't want to do the work, is it like, well, this is my country, I shouldn't have to do this type of menial job?
Yeah.
There is that. There's an undertone of racism there, I would think, or a bit of prejudice. Okay, so it's okay for, next man from Africa or Asia to do it, but hey, I'm not doing that. I mean, that's not really my cup of tea. Well, why not? Why is it beneath your level or dignity to do that? So it's questions that need to be had.
Paul, what do you think about that?
It's interesting because in Britain, when I go to shops or to restaurants and so on, virtually all of the staff seem to be ethnic minority, in inverted commas. But in Germany, and I often go to places like Berlin, that's not the case. You get people doing so-called menial jobs who are white Germans, basically. And they have a very different attitude there. And I was very struck by that. And a friend of mine said when he came here, well, why is it all the non-whites are doing these jobs? But in Germany, white people do those jobs. And he's right, actually. So these are two kind of European countries who have a very different attitude towards this. And I still don't quite understand why Germany doesn't have a problem, with people doing waiting jobs and sweeping jobs. And you don't get, very rare you see a white person doing that in London. But in Germany, in Berlin, the capital, you do see white people, normally white people, actually doing it. So I don't have an answer to that, but it seems to vary from place to place.
I know this is a mad one, throwing a mad curveball. Is it... there's no studies on this. I haven't read about it. It's just your thoughts. Obviously, if you look even the British history, the sun never set on the British Empire type of thing, colonial sort of conqueror. Do you think that plays a part of it? That we conquered the world, and I've not done any study on this.
It's full of Turkish, the guest workers who are now becoming, getting citizenship. So and others now, Syrians, a large number of Syrian people. So, but they were never part of any German empire, of course. So that could be the dynamic there. Yeah.
I think when you come from a war-torn country in which you've been pushed down to a certain level of survival, bottom of. Not the triangle, the bottom of Maslow's triangle, when you're just there, just trying to make things survival, and then you get given an opportunity to go to another country, you want to do anything and everything just to survive and help your kids survive. Now that survival mentality is not something we in Britain are used to use Britain as a case study. Like, we don't feel that we are required or things are that bad that we need to be sweeping or doing Deliveroo. Like, we managed to find something to survive. But those guys over there, I think they've been beaten down to such a level that their barometer and their bar is somewhat different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think going back to Paul's point as well, we have to understand that, there was a split in Germany. So there was a different ideology there beforehand. And there seems to be this, without using the stereotype, but you've got German efficiency. And it's like,
it's not a stereotype. Well, it's true.
Everyone pulls together, and so you have a people that, whether it's a trickling or remnants of a kind of like communist mindset that sort of still is within the mindset of, we all got to pull together. This is our country. We need to make this place great. And that's absolutely everyone. Potentially that's what's translating over there. But whereas what Sheikh is saying, the sun never set on the empire. This is beneath us.
Yeah, can I also interject and add to that? This whole thing about coming from war-torn country. Look at Japan as well. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and so on. They literally came back from being just smashed up, and then look how their work ethic is and was. And they became, obviously, made in Japan was quite synonymous to made in China back in the days. They used to have a lot of technological developments, advancements, some of the best cars in the world, how productive, how reliable they were. So I think there's some truth to what you're saying, actually. It's got my mind ticking and thinking, is there another example that we can base that on? Well, look at Japan.
India as well, yeah. Those guys are very hard workers, and they're dominating a lot of industries, and they've come from 200 years of colonial British rule as well. But some of these points, like lack of homes, some people, Zoe Gardiner is somebody, I think she does a lot of commentary online on this as well, especially when it comes to migration, and she's sometimes making appearances on LBC and the likes. And she says that lack of homes aren't necessarily to do with migrants. It's just people that own those properties, they're selling them at very expensive rates that you can't afford them. When you look at, for example, lack of jobs, it's not necessarily to do with people coming and taking over those jobs, because you can have legislation that, you can keep certain jobs for a certain sector or group of people or whatever the case may be. But is it possibly due to what Ian Cobain said, that in the last 100 years, the UK, there hasn't been a single year that the UK has not been in a conflict worldwide? It could possibly be because of that. The post-World War II, when obviously we're not now a leading empire, we're now tagging on to the US, and we have to do everyone and join in on every one of their wars and the likes. Maybe our money is going there. Is it because we're giving Israel and other countries a big chunk of money as well? So it's easy to blame a minority. And when it comes to analysis, it's been happening in the past, it's happening in the present, and it will happen in the future. It's easy. Just blame the minority, scapegoat. There's a really good book on Islamophobia written by Nathan, and he goes, before there was a group called Bavarian Illuminati. They were scapegoated. Then the Catholics scapegoated blacks, Jews. Now
the Irish.
The Irish, the Catholics. And now we have the Muslims. It's just our turn now. And then it will be someone else.
But to balance it out a little bit, I think the UK is actually not, relatively speaking, a bad place to be a Muslim. Because you try and be a Muslim in Germany, back to Germany, or in France, or in Italy, in fact, anywhere in Europe, you'll find that restrictions on what women can wear, the headscarves, restrictions on what you can say. I went to a university, it was in Leeds about 4 or 5 days ago, and they have a whole section as part of the university there, University of Leeds, which is for Muslims. They have their own office, they have a place where we pray and so on. And this is all integrated in a secular institution paid for by the taxpayer. It's unthinkable in Europe. You never have that in Germany or France and so on. So we have freedoms which we take for granted here, which are under threat, possibly, but there's light years ahead. And there are people who do Hijrah from France to where? To Birmingham. I mean, some Salafi brothers and sisters actually leave France because it's freer in Birmingham, in the UK.
Pick up the pure land of Birmingham.
The pure. So it might be bad here, but it could be worse.
Paul, we need to take you to Birmingham sometime.
Really?
Allenbrook, Sparkbrook. You have to pay those places a visit.
Okay.
But you need a visa, though.
Yes, and you have to pay me as well.
Oh.
Because I'm not going there for nothing.
We'll get the monetization from this podcast. But some of the points that I just wanted to tackle, just in case the people that are watching and they're like, yeah, but what about? Because there are certain talking points. We've addressed lack of jobs, lack of homes, Shariah courts. This is something that's a big talking point. Anytime I tune in on GB News, which unfortunately is getting more and more of a viewer base, they say Shariah courts. But however, they never mention halachic courts, which are Jewish Orthodox
They're not
courts.
courts. This is a misunderstanding. They're councils. They're not courts. They have no legal standing. They're just private associations of individuals who voluntarily go there for advice. They're not courts.
No, they've given it. It's a misrepresentation. Like the Beth Din, I think that's the kind of that's the Jewish equivalent. These have no legal powers at all. It's like, okay, I want to live a certain aspect of my life according to something which is dear to me. I need that to be navigated. I want to know how to navigate that. Go to the quote unquote Sharia courts when there's no such court. It's just again I wouldn't even counsel. I would just say it's like a consultancy. More sort of more faith-based consultancy. And going into this whole kind of the Sharia discussion is one part of the reason. Possibly not even part of the reason, let me say it like this, most of the queries that come are due to marriage-related issues, things of wills. Because we have our own sort of way how to do our nikahs and conduct our religious ceremonies, 90%, if I'm not mistaken, over 90, I don't want to quote stats, but I heard something in the high 90s are marital-related issues. And it's not where, okay, well, a different insurance like this or I don't know, what's the fear exactly? I don't know. But what is it that your people are afraid of?
I'll get to Khalid with regards to why otherizing a community or the other is always an effective tool. But yeah, like I mentioned, halakhic courts of the Orthodox Jews. You've got Roman Catholic tribunals. That's a thing as well.
Yeah. In Westminster by the cathedral, if you're Catholic and you're in a marriage and you want to divorce, you can't get divorced. Yes. But maybe you could get your marriage annulled. So you go to the tribunal, which is made up of clergy, and it's an official institution of the Catholic Church, and they can rule on this, whether or not you're eligible for whatever. But these are not councils, but they do have a force and a role within the Catholic community, and it's very similar to Beth Din and the Shariah consultancies, is what I'm going to call them. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you heard of the ecclesiastic courts as well?
Ecclesiastic means church.
I think they're called
the clergy.
For which denomination?
The denominator.
Okay.
The numerator and the denominator.
Ecclesiastical simply means church. It's just a fancy way of saying church. So which denomination?
I think it's, they say ecclesiastic courts are tribunals established by a religious authority.
Yeah, that's just a generic term. So it could be the Catholic tribunals, it could be if the Church of England, which they do, have the alternative body. For example, because it's a state church, if a clergyman commits certain kinds of crimes, they can be, go before a Church of England body, because Church of England law is state law because it's established church. So they have that role as well, way ahead of anything that we have.
So ecclesiastic is the umbrella term, right?
It's a generic term for church.
For anything under church, okay. Oh, nice. But this is the thing, for people who kind of champion women's rights, and they say, we want women's rights and da-da-da. I would have thought they would have been more sympathetic to the Sharia courts. And the reason why is because, look, let's take a scenario where my man here is one girl, they get married, they do a nikah. Okay, they do an Islamic ceremony, which is not legally recognized in UK. How does she get out of that marriage if my man's refusing to give divorce? Mm-hmm. She will go to the Sharia court and she will say, I'm using this word, see, we're even saying it unconsciously, the Sharia court. Yeah. She will go to the council, she'll go to the consultancy and she will say, look, I'm in this marriage, I'm not happy, I want to get out. And unless he's given her the permission to divorce in the beginning, she hasn't got that right. She'd have to go through the qadi, the judge, the mufti, the scholar, and so on. So she goes there and says, look, I'm unhappy. I don't want to be in this marriage. And even if she's not unhappy, I just don't want to be in it anymore. Okay, cool. Call the husband, try and have a chat. If he's refusing to give divorce, they'll issue the divorce. Mm-hmm. If anything, I would have thought the feminists would have backed him. They thought, well, do you know how many rights and freedom this has given Muslim women? It's given them the voice.
But there was an attempt, Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, when he was Archbishop, he wanted to integrate aspects of Sharia law, quote unquote, into British law. And there was such a backlash.
No way, he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, right?
Head of the Church of England, head of the Anglican Communion at the time. And he understands, he has a very nuanced and rich understanding of Islamic law and so on. He's a very educated man. And he's spoken in these terms and wants to integrate it into, and there's huge backlash from the tabloid press. And the government backed off and said, okay, we won't do it because there's popular backlash. Yeah. But it was based on fear and misunderstanding, not an actual appreciation of the positive sides of it. Yeah. It's a great missed opportunity, actually.
Yeah. That's very impressive. I thought Rowan Atkinson was just a comedian.
You're such a peasant. You're such a peasant. You really are, honestly. You're fired. You're fired. Get out.
but it's going. But dovetailing off this, the Sheikh very unconsciously used Sharia courts. Yeah. Because this is what repetition does. Yeah. And this is how propaganda works. You drip feed somebody into their unconscious, this repetition. NLP works the same way, neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah. And so you do this over a long enough time, and let's be frank, this has been happening since 9/11. Yeah. This slow, incremental drip feed of the othering. And now we're in a place where it's almost dehumanization too. Mm-hmm. And that's really serious, because that's what happened in Germany. When you can dehumanize a population or a community of people, it's much easier for you to now go and exterminate that given threat.
And if you oppose it, they say, well, if you don't like it, go back to your own country. Or where would?
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, where do you want me to go? I mean,
it's Goebbelian propaganda. That's the technical term. You repeat a lie so many times that people believe it to be true.
That's it. And so, how do you then educate the unreceptive? That's where my concern lies. If somebody has had this belief entrenched in their unconscious for so many years, how do you undo that? And I don't want to be a pessimist, but how much dawah, how much, forward-facing Islamic rhetoric can we give that's going to change that? Because by definition, the way I look is already entrenched in that person's mind as being the other.
I'm also slightly pessimistic. The way I look at it is that, let's just say, for example,
You okay there?
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
maybe a cup of tea and maybe a scone.
Don't mind if I do.
But on that note, Khalid, right? I mean, I hear what you're saying about pessimism. I think, look, first of all, da'wah is a responsibility that we should be engaged in, and da'wah doesn't necessarily mean just to kind of, there's this negative connotation in some people's mind. It's about us taking over. It's about sharing a common ground, a common word. This is what we believe. This is what we stand for. And if Muslims don't engage in that,
That's a very important nuance. I'm glad you mentioned that.
and what it is that so now that there's a rise of the far right, unless Muslims kind of engage in a counter narrative where they can kind of undo that negative stereotype and that perception, it's going to keep on rising. And even if everyone does back up their ideas, it will still rise, but it will somewhat hit a plateau. Then it will go plateau for a bit, and then it will not suddenly drop, but then it will continue to drop so long as we do the right thing. But if all of us are kind of, just oblivious to it, and, we're not paying any attention to and look, let's be frank, everybody has a right to know the beauty of Islam.
Yeah.
And wallahi, I'll tell you what, when I've been speaking to people about Islam, I genuinely feel this passion and concern that I love you as an individual, as a human being, and I have respect for you. If you were to adopt some of these ideas, your life, from my perspective, would be so much more better.
So look, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not trying to be the pessimist in the room, but offline we were talking about Hijrah, for example, and how exhausted is the Muslim individual now, where they think, I've got two options. I can either do what the Sheikh is doing, which is an incumbent, it's incumbent on me to do as a Muslim. But cost of living, work, tension, stress, children, all of these things. And now I'm also going to have to go out and prove who I am and that I can integrate and, I'm no threat to you. Or I just go somewhere else where they want me to go anyway.
Another far right watching it. Yes.
Yeah, well, but I mean,
Go do one, mate.
but then I can go somewhere. I can go somewhere where I don't have to explain to anyone who I am.
Yeah, but this is the problem with that logic. The first part of the equation, you're right. There are these problems, but the solution, the grass isn't greener. Where are you suggesting we go? I mean, literally, that's the question. Are you suggesting we go to Afghanistan? Well, no, because of the wars and the occupation, it's a very underdeveloped situation at the moment. We want to go. The things we take for granted, we take National Health Service, we take the roads and everything else. This is a great blessing, and we should not just throw it in the bin just because we can then be free of these oppressive restrictions.
I totally agree, but then it goes back to what I was saying, is that when you use fear as a weapon, it gives you options. Either I fight, which is to do this, either I freeze and I don't know what to do, or I'm going to fly, which is I'm not going to look at logically that I've got a health service and halal food everywhere and eye socks and all of these other things. It's like, let me just get out as quick as I can. And so it's this melting pot.
But the people who are going to, I've got a friend of mine who's a doctor. He's shares many of these concerns with his family. He's gone to Doha in Qatar because he can afford to do so. We don't all have the resources and the money. You simply say, I'm a poor person who works for a pizza company. Oh, I think I'll move to Istanbul and buy a house there. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I think there are several million Muslims in this country. And I'm privileged inevitably because of my own background, so I don't experience firsthand what other Muslims do. But I think really we need to stay and fight, and it's easy for me to say that. But there are enough of us. We're educated enough. We can be organised. We are able to organise actually in this country, unlike in France, for example, where they're shutting down Muslim associations and groups and deporting people left, right, and centre. It's not happening here yet, but it's not happening here at the moment so much. So we can actually push back. And we are. There's some brilliant leaders. There are great guys involved in dawah. When you compare what's going on elsewhere, we don't realise how fortunate we are in some ways. In some ways.
This is, for me, this is home. Like, obviously, my mum's English, half of my family English. I don't look at myself as someone who is, Pakistani, Indian, Bengali, Saudi, my home is here. This is how I've always seen my life. You get me? When I see, my idea is this: is people need to see that there's benefit in Islam, And that comes with engaging in da'wah and people on, taking it as a responsibility that we actually engage with people and say, look, these are our values. And if you compare it to what is there like in contrary to that, you will appreciate what Islam actually stands for. So let's just take, for example, now, just one aspect. Let's just talk about family. Look, I'll be real with you, yeah? Like, subhanAllah, I see it in my English family as well. They don't have the same sort of makeup how we have it. As soon as some of my cousins reach 18, right, that's it, I can go, leave home. Yeah. We don't have that. I mean, literally, I was me, my missus, 3 kids in one room, and it got to a point where anymore, it would have been just hectic in that place. So my mum said, look, you're going to have to move out. And I was like, I don't want to move out. I want to serve you. And that's what I want to do. Now, eventually I moved out. Now there's this debate between me and my brother. I say, look, can mum stay with me on the weekend, please? Can you just come stay in my house for a couple of weeks? We look at it as a privilege. You get me? What's wrong with understanding that this is an Islamic value? And Christians would also agree with this as well. And actually, we're common on this. If we can present to the wider masses what our beliefs actually stand for and the pure benefit in that, people would come around to it. But we're not filling that gap. And all they're seeing is, for example, now, because the stereotype is there, in their mind is, okay, they see the guy with the thobe or the beard, this kind of traditional thing, and they're like, bro, these are just, the other. And that othering has really, and we need to start really promoting what the true value of our deen is.
So there's 2 schools of thoughts here, yeah? You've got the stay and quote, again, I have to put these in quotations, fight, which means face up to what's going on. There's a lot of things in parentheses there. Or the other one is go, leave, yeah? Now, to leave, I think there is a group of people that will fit in this criteria. It may not necessarily work for us, but there will be people it works for. And the people that it works for are people that have been, quote unquote, working very hard. They are absent fathers, they have big businesses or whatnot that can be run remotely. Now, those people, because they haven't given that much attention to their children, now the issue is that they now have to do damage control. So because they're seeing damage happening here, they will want and prefer to go somewhere else, like UAE, you got Qatar, you got Malaysia, you got Turkey. There are many viable options. Now, the people on the other side, if you want to stay and you want to, do samna of this, you want to face up to what's going on to the Muslim community, then you have to buckle up. You cannot continue in the same trajectory that you're on and expect different results. Absolutely. They say the sign of a foolish person is somebody who does the same thing twice expecting different results. Now, here's where we're going to flesh this out now, because let's face it, the majority of the people are not self-made, don't have their own businesses. Like Paul said, it's not practical for them to move. Now, 2 other points, and then you guys can, add your own. One is, if you flopped, and you're politically conscious about what's going on, I'm sorry, you have to be more involved with your children now. 100%. You cannot now be an absent parent and just plonk them in front of the TV, allowing them to vegetate, watching blogging theology or Smart Jannah. It's not, wait, you can watch these two.
So insulting. I mean, your channel maybe, but not mine.
But simply, if you look at the psychology behind Coco Melon and stuff like this, if you've got kids, the amount of psychology that gets put behind it, to get the child's attention, literally for it to be removed from the child, it becomes like a dopamine thing.
But even with that, so you're talking about absent parents. Now, the parent, and this is why I keep talking about the exhaustion. So the parent comes back and they're exhausted and there's a need to escape. And your phone gives you that. Because it's also not just designed to tap into the child's brain, it's designed to tap into yours. That's how the algorithm works. So you'll sit there and look at the name, TikTok. What a brilliant name. Because you're just wasting time. Wow. Essentially, you're just there and the clock is ticking and you're there and half an hour's gone. Dad, look at me. Dad, look what I did. Dad, look at me. Yeah, I'm going to be with you in a second. It's gone. Because you are so exhausted because of what's going on around you, that you don't have much capacity left. This is not everyone, by the way, but this is for a majority of people that sit in my chair and that I'm, dealing with. This exhaustion leads to a desire to escape, and the easiest escapism is in the palm of your hand.
Now, here's the thing. Why would a person in that position feel tired. Why? I mean, there could be many reasons. I'm not saying this is the only reason, and feel free to jump in. People that are more educated tend to have more options and more opportunities and tend to have better jobs with lower hours. Now, those people can spend that time with family. People that are less educated typically have jobs in which they are spending more, which means they would get tired. Now, part of the solution is if you made the wrong choices, then you need to make sure your kids are making the right choices. If you can't do that, then you need to leave. If you are able to do that, understand if you're going to be exhausted on TikTok, then that's going to be a consequence that's going to be waiting. Your kids are going to be alien to you. They're going to tell you tomorrow that they now identify as a pogo stick or identify as a triangle.
As a what?
As a pogo stick.
Really? Is that a thing? Is it? No, I didn't know that was a thing.
But they're going to do the same thing as well, Zishan, because monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah. So there you have that. And then on top of that, knowing your religion, because nowadays so many people at work will be asked, "Oh, Mohammed, you're doing the old Ramadan now." Yeah. So like I remember being asked where I was working in retail, and there were a bunch of Muslims there, and the non-Muslim manager came down, and we were all fasting, and he asked us, why are you guys fasting? And then one guy goes, to feel what the poor people are feeling. And this non-Muslim branch manager goes, "No, you." It's like, "I'm fasting so I can control my desires." He goes, "No, you." 3-4 people, then he came to me, and then I said, "We fast to gain taqwa." The Quranic answer. And he goes, "Yes, he's got it." So in other words, we are now being scrutinized more. Women are going to be asked, why are you wearing that hijab? Why are you doing that? Yeah, Paul, how come you're not eating that pork, mate? It's so nice. Well, it's tasty, mate. It's good tender meat.
Is it?
Well, I wouldn't know. But that's what they would say.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So then...
And my auntie goes to me, like she gave me a kiss when I met her, and she goes to me, "Why'd you have to have that bloody cat on your face?" Yeah, cat. Why? My English auntie said to me, I'm not going to name which auntie. If she sees this, she'll be like, "Why you wouldn't say that online?"
Yeah.
But she gave me a kiss, right? And she goes, "Why'd you have to have that bloody cat on your face?"
Exactly.
So obviously it was a joke, but sorry, I beg your pardon. It was just a mad thought I wanted to chuck in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So now it's obviously the responsibility of people at Speaker's Corner that there's a reason why people are tuning in more to those debates, because they want to know how to answer these contentions and these issues. And they want to see people confidently responding, articulately responding. So these are, one or two things that, as a solution that comes to my mind when it comes to these two schools of thought. Feel free to riff as we draw this topic to a close. And this is what people want to know. Like, what is the solution? Do we just, separate ourselves into ghettos? Do we just, leave? Do we not, do amna samna? Do we, face these things? What do we do?
All right. I mean, I'll share this from, obviously, if you look at what the fuqaha say, right? I don't want to make a plug here, but I have a lecture on this, which I delivered in an Islamic center up in Leeds. Maybe people can check it out if they want to see the full lecture there, inshallah. Look, in summary, there's been some difference among fuqaha as to whether hijrah should happen or not. Imam Abu Hanifa said, "La hijrata ba'd al-fath." Yani after the Fath Makkah, it's not mandatory. Okay, but there's another discussion. But when we look at what the majority of scholars say, there's two aspects which they considered. One is idharud din and imkanul hijrah. Yani in translation, whether you can practice your religion and whether hijrah is feasible or not. So from those two, you have technically 4 scenarios. So you'll have can't make idharud din, can't make hijrah, can't make idharud din, can make hijrah, can make idharud din, can make hijrah, can make idharud din, and can't make hijrah. So you get this 4. So you can't make idharud din. You're in a predicament, you're in a land, you can't practice your religion, and you cannot make hijrah. It's not feasible. There's no way possible for you to make hijrah. Allah talks about these people as إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. They're somewhat exempt. All right, cool, you're in a predicament, don't watch that. Then you have those people that can't make hijrah, I beg your pardon, that can't make idharud din. They can't practice their religion, but yet they can go make hijrah somewhere. For then these people, it's wajib to go. They should go. If you genuinely can. If the main shart here, the condition is that you can't make idharud din. You cannot practice your religion at all. Then it leads us to this third scenario, which alhamdulillah is the majority of us. We can make idharud din. We can practice our religion. But yet we can't make hijrah. And I'll say why I can't, and the reason why I say this. the situation is right. And for us, it's jaiz to stay. It's permissible to stay, so long as your Islam is not affected. Why do I say it's hard to make hijrah? Because let's be realistic, bro. Where are you going to get up and go? This is no dig at the Gulf states. You try and go
Malaysia, big up Malaysia.
Big man thing to Malaysia.
I'm not keen on Malaysian food, so it's just not.
They got some Indian restaurants there.
really?
We've got you covered.
We've got tea and scones there too. Don't worry, and your jams. But look, on a level, yeah, where are you going to go? You go to Qatar, you go to Saudi, no disrespect to these places, you can live there for 100 years, you ain't never getting citizenship. You won't have the same perks. Let's be frank, yeah? You'll always be an outsider.
No, I agree. You'll never be a citizen.
Okay. No, you never will be. Yeah. And let's look at it from another angle. Take your kids back to Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and so on, wherever it's Somalia. Look, we have a culture here. We've grown up in a certain way, in a certain culture. You can't just adapt to that fast. It's just not happening that quickly. It will be a nightmare. And a lot of people have trialed this where they say we're going home. Bro, I don't get it. Bro, you've been living here for 30 years. Where's home? If you're still looking at yourself as an alien, you're going to think like an alien. That's why you're going to treat the country as if you're an alien.
But they treat you that way as well.
Who the parents?
No, we can get
Wallahi, they do. And this is the mad.
Yeah.
Exactly. I read a paper on this, that we're in this kind of state of perpetual alienness. Here and somewhere else, because it's like we don't fit in here, we don't fit in there. So that's why hijrah is not a ground reality for most people. And then the type of jobs, the life you're living and so on, it ain't gonna happen. And then there's the fourth example where you can make hijrah, you can make Izhar al-Din and you can make hijrah. Okay, now here is for a person, because you can make Izhar al-Din. You
got both options.
You got both options.
Yeah.
A lot of ulama say it's jaiz, it's mustahabba, it's good for you to go then. It's good if you can make hijrah. But this is interesting because Mawardi is a scholar of the golden era, if I'm correct, born 1000 to about 1058. He brought another nuance to it. He said, if people can benefit by your presence and understand Islam, then it's wajib for you to stay. But that's if you're doing the work of da'wah.
But I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that in terms of traditional Islamic law, we shouldn't be living here in the West, in these kufr lands anyway, unless we're diplomats, we're here on business trips, we're here. But the vast majority of us are here as economic migrants, perhaps. And so Islamically, we shouldn't be here. So when we complain, when we're in a society that doesn't, indoctrinates our children in alien values, maybe we shouldn't be here. Now, this, of course, is a far right thing as well. They love to hear this. But just to get it on the table, that is Islamically, I think, we have to have very specific excuses to be here in the first place. And most of us are not. We were invited here by the British government to work in the NHS, to work in factories, to keep the NHS going and so on, which is all legitimate. But Islamically, that's not even permitted in Islamic law. So we're in a new situation now, an unprecedented situation, where there are millions of us living all over in the West. So we need new ijtihad, perhaps.
Well, this is why I mentioned the four scenarios, because historically, because what it was that you had Darul Islam, Darul Kufr. But now we're in this kind of interim stage where you have it's not technically a Christian country. It's definitely not an Islamic country, of course not. But there is an element of where there is freedom. So that's why you have these different scenarios. So it all boils down to is, can you practice your religion? And is hijrah even a ground reality? I mean, let's be realistic. I hear what you're saying. There is some classical thought like this, and these are the nuances.
So Khalid, I mean, let's just end with your thoughts about what we've discussed and anything that you'd like to kind of, from your observations, because you have had multiple experiences in different, obviously, aspects of kind of growing up in South London and the likes, and you've noticed again that there's a shift, but also like what's your kind of analysis of it?
I think, look, speaking to the consensus, it's about understanding our why. If we are here to be emboldened by the fact that it's our fard to be able to tell the people about the deen, the beauty of the deen, and how it can very easily weave in and integrate with the way that people want to live and the values that people now want to reintroduce without it being us as the other or the boogeyman or the scary thing, but how these two things can really work in tandem. I don't think we're going to be able to obliterate the hijrah mindset completely. I think that's a very real thing that lots of people are thinking. But like the Sheikh said, I feel like those of us who are educated, that have an understanding of the deen to a decent level, it then becomes incumbent on us to be able to be here and educate. Personally, I'm still very much in the middle.
From a psychotherapy point of view, where do you see the Ummah going? And what choices do you see them making?
I think there are too many competing neurological factors. And I say this really carefully. Islam has so much to offer. And I think the work that you guys do in terms of making it visually viable, it's a sensory piece that you guys offer on YouTube, etc. And that's what people are tuned into. But there is so much distraction now. There is so much distraction that if I said to you, okay, let's talk about the fiqh of tahara, let's get together, you're going to be like, no, I'd rather go and watch YouTube. So how do we compete with this? This is my biggest worry, is that the more distraction we get that appeals to our senses and our neurology, the harder it is going to be for tradition to be able to compete, unless people like yourselves bring those things together, where we can learn almost unconsciously what we're supposed to be doing.
And I think another possibility could be that because we've got such a high threshold of dopamine, taking that threshold down and doing that with the new generation. Like I see when I was a teacher in primary school, so many parents complaining.
You were a teacher in a primary school?
Really?
Really?
Yeah, for 6 years.
6 years? They allowed you to go for 6 years?
They did, they did. But then... no, I just
Well, you said
thought,
I could, say things about you. So you said before we broadcast, you said, no, it's okay if you want to have a go. So I thought I would.
Yeah, knock yourself out. I can take it. So, with the schools, I noticed that a lot of parents were complaining or rather I was complaining, and their response was, yeah, but all the kids have phones. All the kids have devices. How do we stop it? They're going to feel left out. But there were certain parents that still continued that notion that, you know what, I'm going to, at the very least, reduce their time significantly and let them be okay with silence. Let them be okay with creativity. Like, okay, the stuff at home, let me, make believe, imagination, allowing the kids to do that. And a lot of the kids nowadays, forget imagination, they're so socially awkward. They cannot conduct conversations. And because of that, I'm noticing such a shift. And this shift is becoming worse and worse. And you notice them, there's these little kind of TikTok clips that you'll see a person selling an individual a car, and then you just see the camera veer off. And then he puts on like one of those cartoons and he goes, yeah. So come, sign this. So,
but you're talking about children there, and the last thing I just want to add to that is, so Bowlby, who is a wonderful child psychologist, as you know, he has a quote, a very famous one, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says that, what a joy it is to be hidden. When kids play hide and seek, what a joy it is to be hidden, but what a travesty it is not to be found. And so, who is finding our kids? Because if it's not us, it's going to be somebody else. And that's the biggest worry. And so it's about bolstering the why. Why are we doing this, Islam? Why are we propagating this? Really knowing your why, that leads to your purpose. Once you understand your purpose, you can then go out there and, give people that understanding. But without that, it's a disaster.
And it's a force it's such a heavy thought. I'm sitting here thinking, in my mind, thoughts are going crazy, because I'm thinking, how do we manage to get people to disconnect from devices? It's a big challenge. Look, personally, what I've given a simple bit of advice, for what it's worth, anyone can take this on board. Wallahi, just sitting down as a family and reading together, man. Alhamdulillah, in my house, I'm very fortunate, and I make shukr to Allah, honestly. I thank Him that it's something which I did from very young. So when my kids were young, right, I said to them, every time you read a book, I'm going to give you £1. And alhamdulillah, that worked wonders. I said, you ain't getting pocket money. Your money is the reading of the book. And when my daughter hit year 5, she had toppled already the greatest mark ever. We never had a kid in year 5 reach that target, but she'd already got another year left. So that's how I introduced it from young. When they grow older, the truth is you hand them a device, there's that disconnect. They can be in their room for 10 hours just scrolling. So I make time in the evening. We sit down as a family, we do ta'aleem, just 10, 15 minutes. It starts with that. And then a question will come out, and then organically it flows. Dinner time together. These are things as well. Spending family time. And I swear down, if you're sitting down at my dinner table and you pull out that phone, it's drama. I don't care. You put your phone away. Even relatives that come around, like I remember once, subhanAllah, I mean, don't want to go into it mad, but I had a family that came over and everyone was on their device. I just switched the internet. Where I go, turn the router off. I said, now, pay attention. You came to spend time, so let's value the time. Let's value each other's company. And it's true, social, bro, I was on in a counseling related course, just to do a bit of CPD recent. And whenever there's an awkward silence, everyone just picks up a phone. And I'm like, why not have a conversation very British about the weather? Have a very, very...
It's raining, end of conversation.
But this is the thing where Islam encourages that silence. Because it's for those people who think. And so in that moment, in your boredom, creativity is born. But the problem is we don't get that moment anymore, because that moment where you could sit and go, like the Sheikh goes, I was just sitting there now and loads of thoughts were coming to my mind. Had you been on the phone, that would have been distracted.
I call it the toilet theory.
Do we really want to know about this? I mean, do we really want to know
Tell us
about
what goes
it?
in the toilet.
Come on, lower the tone. Tell us about your toilet theory.
I'll tell you about the toilet theory. Now, there's a reason why when we're sitting on the bog and we've got the brown stuff coming out and the yellow stuff coming out,
why did I even laugh? Okay, this is my fault. I apologise, viewers, for encouraging this person.
I'm halfway through. I've got a horrible image now. Finish it, please.
I'm going to finish.
I'm gonna.
We're going to cut this out, all right? We're going to cut this bit out, because it's too X-rated, so 18 plus.
We get so many epiphanies on the toilet.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the best ideas.
That may explain a lot, actually.
It does.
If that's the context of
Why my channel's down the toilet.
A lot of crap ideas.
Exactly.
I have to get that.
It was a good one. Okay. You're just taking the piss.
Where was this during the podcast?
Can we wipe this out of the footage, please? Can we wipe this one out, please?
Absolutely.
Moving on.
So many epiphanies happen in the toilet. So many epiphanies happen when we're bathing. Why? Because we're alone in that room and we know that, no one's going to come in, no one's going to disturb. I'm here, I have to finish the task. Therefore, again, it's fitting in with your point about silence. Yeah? Tesla, I think you've got Tesla, Einstein, all of these guys, when you read their biographies, they all mention either they just take a stroll down the beach, either they just, smoke the pipe and, just let their mind wander off. They all have time. The Prophet ﷺ, when he's in the cave. So there's, wisdom and, a lot of good ideas come in seclusion.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason why a lot of movies nowadays are just remakes of old classics. Why? Because people are simply not having those creative ideas because so many thoughts are coming in.
And so this is what, classical Freudian psychoanalytics talks about: free association. Free association is exactly that. Whatever comes to your mind, just say it. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's not coherent. And I use this.
Bogies.
Yeah, but that would have come from somewhere.
Applies to everyone but you.
Yeah.
Don't apply any for yourself.
But it's not a coherent set of words that are coming out. It's just you're just churning out because these things are in your unconscious and they're pouring out. Potentially, yeah. I'm wondering where bogey and egg sort of fit in together.
Bogey flavored egg. So you mentioned books, yeah? So we're going to practice what we preach, and we're going to try to have a segment in every show, inshallah, if this is a success, that we're going to bring our books that we've been reading during the week and just spend a minute talking about each one. I think our show is coming to an end now, so we're just going to talk about the book and we're going to give a quote. It doesn't have to be in the book. I'm combining two segments together. So why we're reading this book, what we like about it, and a quote. So Paul, start off first.
Oh,
inshallah.
gosh, yes. So I'm currently reading this book by Dr. Yasser Qadhi, who is controversial in some circles, I'm told. Anyway, the book is called Understanding Salafism.
God damn it, Paul. It's too much controversy in the first episode.
No. Seeking the path of the pious predecessors. Yasser Qadhi says in the introduction this is his first academic work, which surprised me actually. I thought he'd written others, but this is the first one. And I want to read a couple of quotes, but it's actually not him speaking, but he's quoting Ibn Taymiyyah, who I'm actually rather keen on actually, as is Yasser Qadhi in some ways. Yeah. So Yasser Qadhi quotes Ibn Taymiyyah on page 73 when he's writing about his views about Sufism. So we assume, because speaking to Salafis, that Ibn Taymiyyah is anti-Sufi. Well, this is what Ibn Taymiyyah actually wrote. Some people accept everything of Sufism, what is right as well as what is wrong. Others reject it totally, both what is wrong and what is right, as some scholars of Kalam and fiqh do. The right attitude towards Sufism, says Ibn Taymiyyah, or any other thing, is to accept what is in agreement with the Quran and the Sunnah and reject what is not. I thought, wow, that's such a balanced view. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Another quick quote, which is just as brilliant, that he quotes as Ibn Taymiyyah. However, as a demonstration of the centrality placed on justice by Ibn Taymiyyah, he approved of the saying, quote, God gives victory to a just state, even if it is unbelieving, and he does not give victory to the unjust state, even if it is Muslim.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, again, what an extraordinary, sophisticated, nuanced and balanced mind. Yeah. Anyway, just two quotes. I do recommend this book, actually, by the way. It's fascinating read. It's teaching me so much about Saudi. I wish I read it years ago, but it wasn't written years ago. But it's just been published. And inshallah, I'll be interviewing Yasser Qadhi once I finish it. We have a deal to do that, inshallah.
Great. Just, what you mentioned about that quote, I heard that in a bayan. Someone mentioned that about, it was one scholar who was visiting from Pakistan, quite a senior scholar. And they asked him, they said that, like Maulana Saab, Mufti Saab, I don't want to mention his name because obviously he might not appreciate me quoting him. So I'll just mention the essence of what he said. And he said, someone asked that, why is it we see that the Western countries on the rise, whereas we see in other parts of the world, they're going down? He said, the reason why that is because अहले बातिल ने अहले हक की चीजें ली हैं और अहले हक ने अहले बातिल की चीजें ली हैं. Just simple answer like that the people who had, the quote unquote guidance, they followed some examples which they weren't supposed to, and that caused their downfall. And yet, for example, other people, they followed the other, meaning that they took what from the Ahle Haq. And he said this exactly that word verbatim, word for word. He said, if a non-Muslim country does the right thing, Allah will always give prosperity, happiness and security. And where Allah's disobeying, the disobeying of Allah would happen, Allah will cause the contrary. So it's just fascinating. That really resonated with me, and that's such a pertinent point. I didn't know that actually came from Ibn Taymiyyah, so I'm really glad that you shared that. Jazakallah for that.
Khalid?
Yeah, so the book that I'm currently reading is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a book that I've read many times over. Whenever I'm going through any transitional period in my life, I often turn to this book just to kind of give me a little bit of recalibration and focus. The book is about Frankl, who was in the concentration camps, and he wondered what it was that gave people purpose in such a difficult circumstance and horrific circumstance. Like, what gave them that desire to live?
He was in concentration camps.
Yeah, he was, and he developed something called logotherapy, which is something I really like, which is purpose-based therapy. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. It's a very short read, so I recommend it to everyone. It's a wonderful piece. The quote that I wanted to share with you is an old quote of mine, actually, that I wrote a few years ago, which is, "Hope is the elixir of dejection." And I think sometimes we can feel hopeless. And when we do feel that, providing somebody with hope, giving them strength, encouraging them to move on and to be able to seek out what their purpose is, I think is huge. It's like an elixir. When it goes down, it kind of gives you that force and that power and that will and that zest and zeal to move forward. And it very much ties in with the hadith in Muslim Ahmed, where the Prophet ﷺ said, even if you knew that the day of judgment was right here and you had a seedling in your hand, plant that. And that's such a wonderful thing, and it's, never give up on hope. Even if everything is collapsing, even if the whole world is coming to an end, there is hope, because, there is always relief after hardship.
So to dovetail off that, somebody who did give up on hope.
Yes.
Yeah, somebody who went into hopelessness. Yeah. Which was George Orwell. You like that, huh? On 1984, this is an absolute must-read. It is to do with hopelessness. It is to do with a very dystopian future, a future in which you can't even think without the government knowing what you're thinking. It has to be pro-government thoughts, where he talks about not having any freedom, where all the things that are essential in life that we value today have been taken away. A very authoritarian, dark view of the future, which is very interesting to see, because you you need to see how worse things can get for you to understand how good you have it. And you only know when you know both extremes. Yeah, and understanding the extremes are very important. And I think sometimes we do live in a utopia. And the quote is, they could lay bare in the utmost detail everything that you had done or said or thought. But the inner heart, whose workings were mysterious even to yourself, remained impregnable. So big up George Orwell. Those people that obviously would struggle to read something like this, at the very least you can read Animal Farm, which is a very small kind of novel book, which isn't very big, and you can start off with that if you're not a big reader. I'm not a big reader, but this is something I forced myself to do. Even a tip I'd give is put Audible on, put it on like 1.5, and then as it does it, just follow along if you feel like your mind just wanders off. That's one way to do it.
You know, similar to what Frankel mentions, in his book, one of the underlying things is that these people can take away my freedom, they can imprison me and capture me, but they can't take away my mind and my thoughts. See how they're kind of very similar? You can't, you know, he's talking about his heart, he's talking about his mind, that you can essentially be prisoned, but you can't imprison my mind. I'll always be free in my mind. So Frankel talks about that. It's a fascinating book.
You know, the irony, I highlighted it, but in the end, they do get to his thoughts. That's the irony. That's the big irony behind it. Like, in the end, they get to his relationship.
But this is what we were talking about, Zishan, about you give enough distraction and you drip feed enough propaganda.
And you create one for you as well.
But bear in mind, this is a very bleak book. So, I mean...
But I think it's a must read. Especially for the day and time we live in, that's a must. I'm
yet to finish it. I only read one chapter, and I was one of my to reads. Inshallah, I want to come across it. I didn't bring my book physically with me. It's a therapy-based book. It's written by Patricia Clarkson. It's called The Therapeutic Relationship. I'm not going to even lie. It's a very, very challenging read. Her use of words, my God. I mean, she could have made things simple, but it is really, really like a really dense book, very difficult, and it's not so straightforward. But anyway, the premise behind it, or the reason behind it, is discussing the therapeutic alliance between client and counselor. Look, in our sort of work, and Khalid would probably agree with this as well, no matter what modality you are, whether it's SFBT, CBT, whether it's psychodynamic, whether it's person-centered, XYZ, if you don't have a good therapeutic alliance with the person in front of you, no matter what you talk about, no matter what you explore, is not going to land in that person. That is key in all therapies. Studies have been done on this, journals have been written. I mean, it's just now accepted as a fact. So she talks about the therapeutic alliance, but mentions how we will oscillate and have 5 different types of relationships. And, excuse me, it probably won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but you sometimes have a relationship based on unconsciously where the person sitting across from you, you're triggering, they're feeling triggered by you from someone in their past. Transference, counter-transference. Sometimes it's where they come from an angle where you have to kind of parent them, so in some ways, and not to treat them like a child, but there is that thing where they're coming to you because perhaps they didn't have a good upbringing, perhaps they, had tricky times with caregivers, and they kind of assume that role. So the therapist needs to be aware of the different 5 states that a client will present, and based on that, you need to know, we're in the person-to-person relationship. Now we're in the working alliance. Right, now we're in the counter-transference and transference, and so on. So anyway, in short, it's a counseling-related book. I'm doing a lot of study and reading around, but that really, I didn't bring it with me, but that is the book. It's not even something I can even recommend. You'd open it and be like, what the heck is this? It doesn't mean anything to me. So maybe I've got other books I read. Time to time, I'll bring something a bit more sensible and easy, inshallah.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, and alhamdulillah, hopefully the viewers have benefited.
If they're still awake.
If they're still awake.
Yeah, sorry.
So
if they didn't turn off after that toilet comment.
I think that's what switched them on.
That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard on a YouTube broadcast. It really is.
Big up the toilet theory.
You might have people going into the toilet with notepads now.
No, it's got to be in the mind. It's got to be in the mind. So, Paul, that brings us to the end of the show.
Does it?
It does.
I'm relieved now.
Alhamdulillah. No pun intended.
No, exactly.
How do you think that went? And, what do you say to the viewers?
No, it's fantastic. We had a certain script, a certain structure. I don't think you mind me mentioning before we started.
Go for it.
And we didn't adhere to that rigidly, which is great. Things developed organically and naturally. It flowed. Some fascinating insights from the brothers here about the nature of life today. I'm very privileged and honoured to be a part of that discussion. So, inshallah, I look forward to next time.
Inshallah. So yeah, like Paul was saying, we were supposed to talk about two big topics, but I think this topic is so vast. I didn't think we anticipated how many angles, and alhamdulillah, we've covered it from so many different angles. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and inshallah, if this flourishes, we will continue it. So let us know in the comments, and inshallah, we will try to make this a weekly show. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum.